Welcome to Out of Spec Guide. And you don't have Max, you got me, Dave, Out of Spec Dave. And what's interesting is some of you have seen on my channel in the past Mike Gilbert, a buddy of mine who lives locally here in Connecticut. He's a driver of an F-150 Lightning, and I love having him on my channel. But we were talking the other day. I said, "Hey, Mike, are you excited about getting the adapter for your F-150 Lightning?" A lot of you out there, Max just did an episode about CCS and NACS and what's going to be happening and what is the difference and all that. But I wanted to have Mike on as a real world driver of an F-150 Lightning. Jim Farley was the first to come out of the gates from Ford and say, yes, we're going to support the NACS standard. And was saying that in early 2024, we're going to come out with an adapter. And what does that actually mean to someone who's using and driving a CCS car from Ford? Let's talk to Mike. Let's pick his brain about this because he's got some interesting stories that just recently happened as to which vehicles he took on a trip versus. You'll get it. Let's get into this. All right. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming on to Out of Spec Guide. Here we are filling in for Max today. It's always great having you on the channel, and I learn a ton from you because you're a real world driver of a CCS car. One that I didn't have the tolerance or the patience to stay with. And so I went all Tesla, and now I'm playing around with these hybrids that are just AC charging anyway. And I'm burning gas. I've been going to the gas station, Mike, and I had to figure out how to put the credit card in the credit card reader. But, what I wanted to do was to kind of pick your brain a little bit about your anticipation about getting this CCS to NACS adapter and just learn from you. Where's your head? What does all this mean to you? And really just share with the audience, if you can, about where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been driving my F-150 Lightning for almost 2 years now. I got it July, a couple of years, about 18 months ago, 19 months ago. And first CCS, first electric car, period. So just kind of went all in on it. Wanted that kind of cross section of, modern truck meets electric vehicle and all of kind of the cross section of technology. So that's what led me here. And it's certainly, in some aspects, it's been significantly easier than I anticipated having it, right? Like I drive a lot for work. I've got about 36,000 miles on the truck, 38,000 miles on my truck so far. So I'm on pace for about 20,000 miles a year. And I still do 85% of my charging at home, even with all those miles. But those road trips, man, sometimes they get you, sometimes they're flawless, and sometimes it's luck of the draw. So one of the things that has always been a challenge and has been a frustration for me, and this channel is well documented, it probably better than most, if not all, is just the reliability issues with CCS and the network providers and their lack of motivation for providing a quality product out there that connects people from point A to point B as reliably as either a gas station or Tesla does currently. So as soon as Farley announced that Ford was jumping on the NACS bandwagon, I was thrilled. I was excited. It's a game changer for how I will use my truck outside of the normal areas in which I drive.
Right. And so the timing of what is your expectation as far as this adapter? When do you think you're going to get it? And what do you think that actually means? What do you think the real world use is going to be of this thing? That's question number one. And then question number two, have you actually taken your F-150 Lightning up to a Magic Dock and charged?
I have. So there's actually the Verona, New York, I think one of the early ones you covered during the snowstorm. That's actually a charger that now connects a route I do for work. So I've charged at that one.
That's up by the casino, right?
It is right by the casino. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long walk to a restroom, but
Yes, it is.
convenient for the drive on the way back and forth there. So I have used that. It's been flawless. And that one is not very crowded. I think I've only ever seen one other car at it every time I've been there, despite it being at a casino. I've actually stayed at that casino a couple times too. That's worked out well for work, where I can make it all the way up there on a charge, on an 80 or 90% charge, stay over, zip up in the morning, and then I'm back, all in one shot. With It's almost like charging at home with that setup. So that's been good. And I think early on, right when they first announced them, Brewster, New York is the closest one to us.
Right.
So I zipped up there real quick. Didn't even really need to charge. Just wanted to do it. Wanted to see how it worked. So
Yeah. That was almost to the day a year ago.
I know, crazy.
And I remember Kyle giving me a call and saying, "Dad, you won't believe this. Brewster, New York's got a," So I rushed up there and
Yep.
I charged my wife's GV60. And then Tom Malogny went up the next day and he met
Yeah.
Marquez Brownlee there. That was like the funniest thing. Yeah. So what speeds do you get at a Magic Dock versus, let's say, you're charging on a 350, properly outputting 350 EA? Is it where do you pull? Is it about the same or not quite as much?
So that's actually with the Ford Lightning. That is an interesting difference between EA 350 or like a Delta 350 unit that's working properly. Um, you get, because of the amperage of the cable, I believe, you will get a boost period for about 10 minutes that the Magic Docks do not deliver.
Mm,
So when you plug in, regardless of state of charge, I'll usually pull on a 350 if I get a good charging session, anywhere from 165 to, I've seen almost 190, for about a 10-minute period. And then it'll settle into right around 120, 128 kilowatts. And it'll hold that pretty much straight till 80%, and
oh
then
wow, okay,
taper off.
all right.
On the Tesla, it's just the 128 pretty much straight through to 80.
So you don't even see 150 on a Magic Dock. Okay.
No.
All right. So you miss out on that little 10-minute boost, but the balance of that is, once you get this adapter, how is that going to change your life?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess just the easiest answer, without getting too complicated, is I'm going to be able to go somewhere without ever thinking about charging. It is going to be as close to that gas ice car experience as you can get, between the combination of what CCS is still there, and then the opening of the V3 plus superchargers, which I think I looked at a Ford email, I think is somewhere around the 17,500 number and growing at this moment, is going to be just hop in the car, go plug it into the route planning, not having to do as much of that. I think when we first did the Your EV journey, I was saying that the struggle was not getting to point A to point B. There's a ton of software out there, both the internal navigation, the better route planner, now even Apple Maps, soon to be Google Maps. Those all do a really good job of telling you how to get to point A to point B. There's no real stress in point A to point B. It's, when do I go to point C, and where is point C in relationship to point B? That's what you never think about in a nice car. That's where I spend a lot of time thinking about, because if you put yourself at a low state of charge arriving at point B, and then you spend a night, or you're 2-3 hours later, then you got to go to point C.
Right.
That's where it gets a little dicey. So being able to have that now, the combination of the two, that's the simplest answer.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So I know you just went skiing up in the Vermont, and I mean, not having this adapter and having your F-150 Lightning. It's one thing when you're doing your work runs and you drive a lot. I mean, and being able to charge at home, it works for you. You've worked it. I mean, 20,000 miles a year, Mike. That's a lot, right? And
Yeah.
and it works great. But when
Yeah.
you go off the beaten path, right? You don't even take your F-150 Lightning.
Yeah, so Jay, who was on the video with me, he was
Oh
going
yeah,
up,
yeah.
and we were talking about it a lot. We're like, should we take one of our trucks? Like, kind of want to do it just for the adventure part of it. And, so we kind of mapped it out, even picked an Airbnb that had level 2 charging at it, so to make it even easier that way. And ultimately we decided not to take our trucks, and a buddy bailed us out in the ice world here with his Bronco, because we were dependent upon one Electrify America on the way up. I think it was like Lebanon, New Hampshire.
Right.
And, and then nothing else around it. So you get up there and there's a dead post, or charging is limited, or all the things that you hear and that I've experienced, and everybody who's driven CCS for a long enough time has experienced those pain points. There's no other bailouts.
So you were going north. You're going up
Mhm.
like to J Peak, is that right?
Yeah, we skied J, so we stayed like Island Pond, like,
Right.
up past St. Johnsbury, and there's
Yeah.
just nothing up there. I mean, I
Right.
think I looked at it after when we were talking about doing this, and according to PlugShare, taking out like anything that will charge 250 kilowatts or above, I think there's a whopping 4 or 5 total
Hmm.
places for CCS in both states, Vermont and New Hampshire.
Right.
And some of them are one plug, two plug at a car dealership. There's not a lot of options out there, and they're spread out.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was so we
Yeah, so now
ultimately bailed
compare that to once you have this adapter, and I wanna ask you just a little bit about, what the communication from Ford has been to you publicly, what they've sent to you and what your expectations are. But had you had that adapter
Yep.
and you had tested it and it worked on V3s, right?
Mhm.
What would have been your experience being able to rely on the Tesla network on that same exact trip?
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty much 91, which runs north to south, all the way up through Vermont. They have it pretty well covered. I think it's roughly every 100 miles or so to up to St. Johnsbury, which was the closest major town to where we were staying. So that would have been comforting. And then when you look over at New Hampshire, uh, 93, that 93 north south corridor is littered.
Mhm.
So, it would have been just jump in the car, go, bailout options galore.
Right.
Yeah, and there was a few other ones in other places outside of those 2 main routes, but pretty much if anybody knows Vermont, New Hampshire, everything you're doing in those are pretty much on those 2 corridors right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you also have 89 that cuts over too, right?
Yep,
Up to Burlington and over
yep,
by Waterbury, right by
yep.
where Ben and Jerry's is. Not that I've ever been there, Mike.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so now tell me a little bit about your expectations around this, the timing, communication about this adapter. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so the Ford and Tesla combined, I guess, have been pretty good about Twitter updates. That's where a lot of the updates I've gotten have come. We did get one email that was just kind of an update on all things going on, maybe a lightning press update, and it had a section about charging,
Mhm.
and it said in there, here's, and they were pumping their Blue Oval network and how many CCS chargers and that single source that you could use. And then they had a little line about coming soon, and it said spring of 24.
Mhm.
So that's the only like official statement that's been out there. I think the Tesla charging Twitter handle said they were going to start shipping with Ford and GM, in the next month. Unclear if that next month was February or March, but either way, that spring timing, kind of lines up with that. And, wanting to do it so all of the manufacturers who just kind of flooded on the bandwagons of Ford announcing first and then GM coming second, doesn't just have a mass rush to chargers for people just wanting to try it out, test it out. So, yeah.
So, what is your expectation as far as the adapter itself? Is that, first of all, is it your understanding that Tesla will send that to you or Ford will send that to you? Do you think you're going to have to buy it? How is that? What's your understanding at this point in the evolution of this adapter being rolled
Yep.
out to the marketplace?
It's my understanding that Ford will send it to us to existing owners for no charge. That's my current understanding of the
Okay.
of the thing. Yep. Because they'll start to in 25, they will start to natively equip NACS in their thing with no need for an adapter. So to bridge that gap, it's really just right 22, 23, 24 models. So there's 3 model years that they will need to adapt, provide an adapter before it's just native.
Okay. And I know that there are some third-party manufacturers. I think Lectron has a device out right now, an adapter. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to to watch Tom's video, Malagny's video about it. But one concern I guess I would have is if you don't get the adapter from Ford itself, and let's say you plug that in, a third-party adapter that you buy. I don't know why you do that if Ford's going to give you one for free, but let's say you did that, and something were to happen and toast your battery. I don't know, maybe would that happen? I don't know. But what recourse would you have either to Tesla or to Ford if that were to happen? What's your thought on, like, it sounds like you're just going to wait for, even if there's some other adapter that comes out that says, hey, you can charge your F-150 Lightning today, buy this thing for $200. Would you even do that, or would you just wait for the Ford adapter?
Yeah, I think it just makes sense for all the reasons above. I have no idea. I couldn't even come close to commenting on, what would be the risk if an adapter was deemed the fault of a battery failure. But given the fact that Ford's going to send it and it's OEM, I just makes sense doing it. I'd be in a hurry to just do it. But the reality is like when I started talking, even though I drive a ton of miles, I'm still 85% charging at home anyway. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, listen, I think this is great stuff. I mean, the fact is that, on the fringe cases going up to JP, whatever, St. Johnsbury, in a pickup truck, it really isn't about a pickup truck. It's about a CCS car. Like, for example, if you had an Ioniq 5 and you were driving that, or even if you maybe a Lucid, maybe you would do it. I don't know if you charged it at 100% and you hypermiled the thing. But, with a car that's got 280 miles of estimated range or 270 miles of estimated range, you probably wouldn't have taken that car either, right? I mean,
not yet. Yeah,
not yet.
When it'd be like taking a road trip and going someplace that, over 300 to 400 miles, you had one gas station, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah,
you probably wouldn't have a lot of confidence in that road trip. So I think that's where we're at. We touched on the exciting parts about just what it opens you up to, reliability. I think the other thing worth noting is another thing, this channel has done a good job covering, is just the congestion at chargers today, predominantly driven by these free charging plans, right? That stress is then removed when, Tesla's not offering free charging to Ford Lightning owners, right? And so I think that is a plus side. Some of the questions I still don't have answered that are kind of on my mind is, Ford has made a comment that it's going to be tied through their Blue Oval network, right? So I know I can sign up for, the Blue Oval, which it's plug and charge. They haven't announced whether this is going to be plug and charge. I feel like if they were going to do plug and charge, at least on the insurance, they'd probably be hyping that up a little bit more than they are. So my guess is you'd still have to activate through either the in-car or the app, but through one app. My question is going to be, can I choose not to use Blue Oval? Because I don't use Blue Oval currently. I find
forgive me, but what is Blue Oval?
That's their overarching charging plan to try to make the experience easier. So they've teamed up with, most of the major CCS charging networks to put it under, so name ChargePoint, Electrify America, Blink, EV Connect, EV Go, and then probably 200 more I'm not naming that are smaller in different parts of the country. And it allows you to have one account. It allows you to use one app. And in the case of Electrify America, it allows you to have plug and charge. So that I don't currently use the Blue Oval network with Electrify America because there is not a way to have a Electrify America Pass account, or the Pass Plus as they call it, to buy down the rate through Blue Oval. And it's 25% discount to buy down the rate with what I'm charging. Makes sense to just activate through the app and do that. So I'm wondering if the same will hold true with Tesla, because there is, at least now for the Magic Dock, there is a buy down the rate Tesla plan for non-Tesla cars too. So that remains to be seen. So I'll check back with you once I hear more there. And then my biggest concern, and this was well documented when everybody rushed to that Brewster, New York station that we talked about, and all the YouTube cameras came out, where you got to kind of shift over one spot to the right and you got to take two spots up. That's going to be interesting when you start using that as your primary source of charging. And every time I roll up, I take up two spots. How's that going to be received? Is there going to be this? Yeah,
Kevlar is a very strong bulletproof material.
yeah,
I just like, I ask everyone to keep cooler heads here. I wonder how in this adapter, you got to wonder if they're actually going to make it longer so that perhaps they make it 5, 6 feet, or maybe you'd have a choice. All right, we'll give you the short one, or you could pay extra for a longer one. I know there are issues. It's not that simple. When I brought that up in the past to Kyle, he's saying, anytime you add an adapter, you add complexity, you add heat loss, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, arcing perhaps if it's not done properly. But it'll be interesting to see. I remember when Tom was trying to pull his F-150 up, and that had that post in the middle that they subsequently pulled out and removed.
Yep.
But that was pretty crazy. But look, it's kind of an exciting time. I wonder, do you think Ford's going to be the first one? They were the first one to announce NACS. Do you think they're going to be the first ones to deliver the adapter?
I think so.
You do?
I think they'll make a point to do it. How I'm not really in the GM circle, so I don't really know the communication that GM is having with its EV owners on their transition. But I will say, I mean, Ford's usually pretty good with things like this, and that would be a huge miss if all of a sudden the internet's lighting up and Twitter's going nuts with a whole bunch, or X is going nuts with a whole bunch of GMs charging.
Can you imagine if Volkswagen brings out the adapter first, right? How cool would that be? The first adapter is a guy in an ID4 plugging it into a V3 and charging it. So, well, this is cool, Mike. There are a lot of unknowns. I think that hopefully what we've been able to do today on this episode of Out of Spec Guide is just to kind of educate those who are thinking about what's going on specifically with these adapters and what does it look like in the future. I think there are so many issues that are going to come out of this. Some of them are going to be social issues. You have some very proud Tesla folk out there that are not necessarily going to love having you take up 2 of their spots, right? Especially in busy, and how we all handle that, at the actual charging stations. Again, I want to reiterate that we're all in this together. Let's all be friendly and nice and help each other and do this. But it'll be great once we work through this as an industry and as consumers. I think everyone behind the scenes is really working super hard to be able to let you take that trip up to J Peak in your truck, right? It's a shame that you couldn't do that. And so we're on the brink here, right? We're so close. Yep. And there's so much more to follow and so much more to think about here, and it'll be super interesting to unfold. So when you're going to do this now, Mike, you don't have an option here. As soon as you get a correspondence, whatever it is from Ford, you got to call me, okay? And we're gonna get back on, and we're gonna keep everyone updated. And if anyone out there does hear from Ford before Mike does, call me. All right. So we would love to hear what your thoughts are. But this is good stuff. Mike, last thoughts from you, my friend.
Yeah. Last thoughts, I think, would be a suggestion out to the EV producers here is communication rights a lot of wrongs. And in this time where it's a little awkward, maybe we take up spaces, making sure that they're doing as much as they can to educate the everyday person, not just the people who are, in this, the super EV enthusiasts, the first time buyers, of just like, what is the protocol? It's like, you look at a station from my hand is I'm always trying to go as far right as possible because I always have to be one over to the right. So if I can be not in a spot, if there's pull-in stations, looking for those. And on the flip side too, on the Tesla side, because they don't need to use pull-through stations.
That's right.
Unless they're towing something, and letting them know, like, hey, if there's a pull-through and you don't need to use a pull-through, don't take up a pull-through.
Yeah, it's like up in Brewster, right? There's the one that's kind of all the way on the left that's on the side, which anybody could use. That's the perfect one for your F-150 Lightning thing.
That's what I charge on.
And then the one all the way on the right there's like a little room. It's like I was just up there a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot of room on the right-hand side so that you don't have to take up two spots. So Brewster's got, just by definition, they've got two. I don't think it was by design. Maybe they picked that station because it was, those two were like that. But yeah, you're right, Mike. I mean, I think it'll be good that everyone is sort of helpful at these stations. So
Yeah.
a little bit of foreshadowing with the Magic Docks. And I haven't really seen anything, but it's not like I'm up at Brewster all that often. But exciting stuff, exciting
Very.
times. I want to thank everyone for joining us here. Another episode of Out of Spec Guide. And Mike, we're going to stay in touch. We're gonna pick your brain about lots of different things, maybe a little bit more specific around pickup trucks, because there's a lot going on in that space, right? With
Oh yeah.
love to hear your
Times there.
thoughts about Cybertruck and the new Dodge Ram Charger that's coming out. And I've been playing around with these hybrids with my Volt and my ELR, and does that make sense? So I've got some other things I want to talk to you about. That's for another day. But again, Mike, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everybody, take care. Enjoy.
Take care.
Bye bye.